Today I will be telling a Bantu story. It is the tale of the shepherd, told by the Maragoli and Tiriki Bantu tribes of Kenya. It comes from the book Bantu Folklore Tales of Long Ago by Alta H. Hoyt. A quick oral history of the Maragoli. The Maragoli history uh, tells us of a migration that took place from Northeast Africa. And the story of the Maragoli people begins with a man called Mulonguli. He was descended from Kintu, who led the progenitors of the Luya to the current area from a place called Misri, now known commonly as Northern Sudan and Egypt. Now the story goes as following. There was a boy who was taken from his family and raised by a female giant. Now, when the boy had grown to adulthood, the female giant asked her children one day, "If I got you a shepherd, would you like it?" They answered her, "Oh, if you bring us a shepherd, we shall be very happy. Where can you get one?" Then she went inside and brought him out down from the attic, and they saw him for the first time. They shaved off his hair, and he began to herd their cattle. After some months he kept taking the cattle further and further away each day until the owner said that some of the enemies might take them away from him. So they said, "Let us go and test them out," as though we were enemies trying to get the cattle. So they did. And the boy drove them away and followed them over hill and dale until they were faint with thirst as he chased them. So they returned home and praised him very much as a brave shepherd. Then there came a day when he took the cattle far, far away and decided to run away home with them. He came to a large lake and said to the water, "Waters of my father, part of you stand up on my right hand and part on my left hand." He stretched out his rod over the waters and divided them. The water of the lake obeyed him, divided and stood up on each side, and he passed through on dry land with all the cattle. And an old woman had seen him taking the cattle across the lake, and she went back where the giants were having a great feast, and she shouted and sang to them, "Your shepherd, which you brought here, he is taking away all your cattle, sheep and goats." The giant bulls burned when they heard that, and they gathered up their weapons of warfare quickly and went after the cattle. When they reached the lake and saw their shepherd and their cattle on the other side, they shouted, "Can we cross over like you did?" He answered them, "Yes, all of you, come close together." He divided the waters from them as he had done before, and when the giants were all in the midst of the lake, he commanded the waters to come together again, and all of them were drowned. As the boy took the cattle on home, robbers came out of the caves and tried to take them, and he began to sing to himself the shepherd's song, "Herd nets of my father, herd nets, let me hear your voices, herd nets." Then the big bull bellowed, and the hornet came out of his nostrils, and they stung the thieves badly until they returned to their gang. End of story. This is the Bantu story told by the Maragoli and Tiriki people, the Bantu tribe of Kenya. And maybe you have guessed it already, but it tells the story of the biblical Exodus. And when we examine the story, we find it to be corresponding with the Bible. Now, first, the boy who was taken is Moses. Hmm? Moses. Hmm? The giant in this story represents the Egyptians. Hmm? And it's also interesting to note that in the old tradition of the Maragoli people, they say that the forefather, that they descended from King Tu, who came from a place called Misri. Misri might be the old name, might represent the biblical name Mizraim, now called Egypt, in the past also called Northern Sudan. But the giants in this story represent the Egyptians. The female giant who raised them is the daughter of Pharaoh. And Moses was brought up in the house of Pharaoh's daughter, actually in the house of Pharaoh. And so he became the prince of Egypt. In the book of Acts 7, verse 20, we read, "But when he was set out, Pharaoh's daughter took him away and brought him up as her own son." So Moses was raised as the son of Pharaoh's daughter, so as you may know. And the story also tells us that they shaved off his hair, and the shaving of the hair is a traditional practice of the Egyptians. The Israelites, however, were told by Moses not to make baldness upon the head. Actually, they were told not to imitate their hairstyle of the Egyptians. Further, the story also tells us that when the boy was grown, he became a shepherd over the flock. And let's see, in the book of Acts, the same chapter, chapter 7, we also read that when he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel, and seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended and avenged him who was oppressed, and struck down the Egyptian. Now, in the story, we see that Moses became a shepherd over the flock that was given to him. Eh? And the Bible tells us that when he came to the age of 40 years, that it came into his heart a compassion and to care of his brothers. And the giants tested the loyalty of the boy. They were afraid that he will turn against them and flee with the cattle, that is the Israelites, who were under the servitude or under slavery. Now we know from the book of Yasher that the Egyptians indeed they doubted the loyalty of Moses because they knew that he was an Hebrew, and they were doubting his loyalty, rather if he will deliver his people, fight for his people, or that he will be loyal to Egypt. So the book of Yasher tells us that Moses was sent to fight the battles of the Egyptians against the enemies of the Egyptians. So Moses was a commander of an Egyptian army. He was a strong warrior, a fighter. We know him, the Bible depicts him as a prophet, as a prince, but he was a warrior. He was a military man who knew how to fight. He commanded the army of Egypt, and he was tested by the Egyptians in his loyalty. And he was sent out many times to do battle. And in all his battle, he was victorious. And he became known in Egypt as a brave warrior and as a brilliant man. In the story, we see that there came a day that he took the cattle away to the homeland. And it is actually the exodus out of Egypt. He brought them out after he had shown wonders and signs in the land of Egypt, after he battled the Egyptians' gods, after he battled the gods of Mizraim. He brought the sheep and the goats out of the land of the giants. And then he came across a lake, a body of waters. And in the story, we see that he called upon the fathers, he called upon his ancestors, he called upon the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the story, we see that he shouted aloud, waters of my fathers, waters of my fathers, depart, divide, stand on my left and my right hand. And the waters obeyed him. It is really the crossing of the Red Sea, told here in the oral tradition of the Maragoli and Tiriki Bantu tribes of Kenya. It is the exodus, the dividing of the Red Sea. He trusted in the God of his father, and the water divided. And in the story we also see that the giants, they were not happy about this, and they chased the boy who ran away with the sheep and the goats. And when they came by the sea, they're there to cross, and the boy called upon the waters of his father to return, and the giants were drowned by the water, and they died. Wonderful story, really wonderful story. We also see that thieves came against the shepherd. They came against the shepherd to steal the sheep and the goat. But that he sang a song, a battle song, a song that he called upon the hornets. Now the hornets are they represent here the angels, the Malachi, the angels who came and fought with the enemies, who tried to steal the sheep and the goat from this boy shepherd, and they were delivered. It's a wonderful, wonderful story. It tells really the biblical story of the Exodus, how Massa, delivered the sheep and the goat, the Israelites, out of slavery, out of the house of bondage. Yes, I hope this story helped you some way to realize that we, the Bantu people, we are the people of the book. Now, for now, I say greetings, blessings, Siemi, and if you are not, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe to my channel, especially if you enjoy this story and the short analysis of it. And share it with our Bantu families who need to hear this wonderful story from our one of our Bantu tribes from Kenya. So blessings, and till the next time.